Joining us now, Canvas Ventures General Partner Mike Ghaffary. Mike, great to have you in studio.
Thank you.
You listened to our conversation there. Where do you place Airbnb? Should we be comparing it to the other OTAs and hotels, or should we consider this a big cap tech?
Well, look, I think there's three buckets that Airbnb could fall into. OTAs are a natural choice, right? Because it's in the travel, thinking about Expedia, Booking.com. You could also look at the marketplace category, right? And say, hey, they share more in common with Uber or DoorDash or others there. And the question is, what would it take for them to be considered like large cap? I think if you look at large cap on a revenue multiple basis, on an EBITDA or an earnings multiple basis, Airbnb looks a little more expensive, but they've got much faster growth and actually a higher gross margin profile than some of the large caps like Amazon or Google. So they've got to get credit for that.
Right, that growth profile is larger than some of the mega caps. So what does it do now, though? I like your point in that the mega caps are diversified. They're not one business. I mean, you could argue a lot of one business for a Google example on search ad revenue. But Airbnb is now sitting on $9.6 billion in cash. What do they do with that? This isn't a typically acquisitive company. Do you think they become so in this environment if investors are looking for more reason to up price targets?
I think M&A is a huge opportunity area for Airbnb. With that much cash on the balance sheet and the two biggest acquisitions in recent memory, I think go back to 2019, are in the $300 million or less range, Hotel Tonight and Luxury Retreats. And I think there is game-changing M&A that Airbnb could do. You know, maybe it's in loyalty or some of those areas they talked about. Maybe it's in experiences, areas that Chesky used to be super excited about, had to really focus on the core, which I think was really smart to get through the pandemic. But now is that time to think broader, coming on the heels of this profitability.
Right, and they're doing things around the edges like insurance, right? That doesn't exactly add a lot to revenue. It does add to profitability. But what would that look like in terms of a loyalty program? Do they need those users? What could they do that would actually change the game?
Well, I think what's really interesting about Airbnb, too, to remember is unlike the other OTAs, right, where you can book your hotels many places, Airbnb is actually like the only channel to book most of the inventory that's on their site. Even the sites on, you know, the inventory that's on Vrbo or HomeAway, those homes aren't always on Airbnb. In fact, in most cases, the ones I'm looking for are not. So they've got all this defensibility. If you can build a loyalty program around unique supply in a way that, you know, Amazon did and Dash is doing, DoorDash with Dash Pass, there are opportunities there. But also I think about, is there a game-changing Airbnb M&A opportunity? The way Google did Android, not even a huge acquisition, but they said, hey, the next platform is mobile. Let's get 5 years ahead of this. And so is there something with AI, you know, getting very pie in the sky? Or if you can make a bet on what's the future next platform, Airbnb is in a really unique position to do that.
What's the risk that Brian Chesky and his team doesn't do anything? I mean, before the pandemic, this was a very different company. They were talking about building and operating their own hotels, essentially, and they've come so far away from that and focused on their core, which is a good thing. But are they losing some of the innovation and that diversification that would make them more of a big cap or bring them to the next level?
So I've been lucky to spend a fair amount of time with Brian Chesky, and I don't think he's the kind of person who's going to lose the innovation. I just think that he can't help but come up with new ideas, you know, and be inspired. So I think he'll come back to some of these frontier areas, but I think focusing on the core really helped them get to 23%, you know, profitability.
And actually, let me turn this now to a company that's going to report later this week, and that's DoorDash. They are going vertical with Dash Marts, very capital intensive. He is taking that risk in an environment where investors are less forgiving of that investment. How do you think that turns out?
Look, I think DoorDash has to kind of make some of those investments to really kind of expand beyond just food delivery. I think this could work out well for them, but it'll be interesting to see how other players like Instacart, who still hasn't been able to go public, but you know, at some point will come on the scene and others are going to react. But I think Airbnb is in a really interesting position among Uber and DoorDash right now. Airbnb is in a unique and special position.